Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett was one of the members scheduled to question him. She had built a reputation for being well-prepared, sharp and unafraid of powerful figures. She was ready with documents, timelines, and evidence-based questions. Although she expected tension, she did not expect what was about to happen. From the moment Justice Thomas entered the room, people could sense agitation in his body language. Staffers later said he looked irritated and impatient even before the hearing started. He avoided eye contact and spoke harshly to his advisors. It was clear he did not want to be there and did not intend to cooperate smoothly. As the hearing officially began, the chairman read the usual procedural statements. Everyone waited for the questioning to start. The tension was already noticeable. But everything remained under control until Thomas began to speak out of turn. He challenged the authority of the committee and argued that Congress had no right to question a Supreme Court justice on matters of ethics. This caused some quiet reactions in the room, but no one expected the situation to escalate further. When it was Jasmine Crockett's turn to speak, she approached the situation professionally. She adjusted her microphone, greeted the witness, and began with a simple, calm question. Justice Thomas, can you explain why several financial gifts were not disclosed as required by law? Instead of answering the question, Thomas reacted defensively. He accused the committee of political bias and claimed that Crockett was disrespecting him. His voice grew louder and he questioned her authority to interrogate him. Crockett remained composed. She responded by reminding him that members of Congress are responsible for oversight, especially concerning ethics issues. She emphasized that no one is above the law, not even a Supreme Court justice. Her firmness seemed to irritate Thomas even more. According to people in the room, he appeared shocked that she wasn't backing down. He interrupted her several times, raised his voice, and insisted that her line of questioning was inappropriate. But Crockett didn't let his behavior distract her. She stayed focused and continued with her questions. She pointed out inconsistencies in his disclosures and asked for clarification. The more she pressed, the more upset Thomas became. The breaking point arrived when Crockett asked a question about a specific undisclosed luxury trip. Thomas leaned forward and declared that he did not accept her authority to question him. He then did something that stunned everyone present. He attempted to order security to remove her from the hearing. This was because the Supreme Court justice has no legal power to order the arrest or removal of a member of Congress. Within the U.S. government, the branches operate independently. A justice cannot command law enforcement inside Congress, and certainly cannot detain a Congress member. Everyone knew this, everyone except Thomas in that moment. His reaction created instant chaos. People in the room exchanged confused glances. Some members gasped. The room felt like it had stopped moving for several seconds. Jasmine Crockett, however, stayed exceptionally calm. She pressed the microphone button, leaned slightly forward, and said in a clear voice, "Justice Thomas, I strongly advise you to sit down." The simplicity of her response surprised everyone. Instead of arguing, instead of panicking, she responded with firm control. Her tone carried authority. She reminded him, without needing to raise her voice, that he had crossed a boundary he had no right to cross. At that moment, the tension in the room shifted. People began to realize that Thomas had overstepped dramatically. The security officer did not move, because he knew Thomas's order had no legal standing. Committee members began whispering to each other. Some looked visibly uncomfortable. Others looked almost stunned. And it was in this moment that Justice Thomas realized he had made a mistake. He understood that his attempt to order her removal had backfired. What he had done wasn't just inappropriate, it was unconstitutional. Within seconds, cameras captured the reaction. Journalists in the room immediately began sending messages to their networks. News alerts started to appear online. The incident escalated from a tense hearing to a national controversy in minutes. Crockett, meanwhile, continued speaking calmly. She resumed her questioning, but also addressed the situation directly, pointing out that no official has the authority to silence or remove a member of Congress during an oversight hearing. Her explanation made the legal facts unmistakably clear, and the room slowly regained order. But the damage was done. Thomas looked unsettled. His advisors whispered urgently in his ear. For the first time since he entered the room, he seemed unsure of himself. He looked around and realized how many cameras had captured the moment. He understood how it would appear to the public. A Supreme Court justice attempting to misuse his authority against an elected representative. The hearing eventually continued, but nothing was the same after that. The story had already traveled outside the room. News organizations were preparing breaking news headlines. Social media was exploding with reactions. Constitutional scholars were already discussing the implications. And Justice Thomas, who had walked into the building confident and defiant, now found himself at the center of a controversy far bigger than the ethics questions he came to avoid. That was the moment his regret began. The room remained tense after the attempted removal. Committee members whispered among themselves, and journalists quickly typed notes for their live feeds. Everyone understood the gravity of the moment. A Supreme Court justice had tried to exert authority over a Congresswoman, a move unprecedented in modern American history. Jasmine Crockett remained calm. Her focus never wavered. She returned to her questions, laying out facts clearly, citing documents, and pointing to previous statements and disclosures. She asked questions systematically, leaving no room for misdirection. Her composure contrasted sharply with Thomas's visible agitation. Thomas's advisors whispered repeatedly, trying to calm him down, but he waved them off. His voice, already raised, became sharper. He attempted to interrupt Crockett several times, insisting that the hearing was unlawful and that her questions were impertinent. Crockett: Justice Thomas, I'm asking questions that the law allows this committee to ask. You are obligated to respond truthfully. Your personal frustration does not override your obligations. The room seemed to pause at her words. Staffers, security, and members of the committee realized she was not just responding, she was controlling the flow of the hearing. Thomas leaned back in his chair, a flicker of frustration crossing his face. He had intended to dominate, intimidate, and possibly halt the questioning. Yet every attempt to regain control was countered with clarity and poise by Crockett. At one point, he raised his voice, pointing at a security officer. Thomas: remove her from this room now. The officer hesitated. Everyone froze. He knew that he had no legal authority to act on Thomas's instruction. The attempted command exposed a critical error. Thomas had overestimated his own power. Crockett stayed seated, maintaining eye contact. She did not raise her voice. Instead, she said quietly but firmly, Crockett: Justice Thomas, you do not have the authority to remove a sitting member of Congress. Any attempt to do so would be illegal. Her calm explanation had immediate effect. Thomas's face changed subtly, an expression of recognition that he had crossed a line. The energy in the room shifted. Observers noted that the justice's earlier confidence had given way to hesitation. Journalists in the room exchanged glances. Some discreetly typed messages to their networks, knowing this confrontation was more than a routine ethics hearing. It was a historical moment. Crockett's methodical approach. Throughout the hearing, Crockett's strategy remained deliberate. She avoided raising her voice, never resorted to personal attacks, and stuck to the facts. She structured her questions to build a narrative that clearly outlined the discrepancies in Thomas's disclosures. She began with small questions to establish a factual baseline: dates and locations of trips, details about financial gifts, timing of disclosures. Then she progressively asked more direct and pointed questions, leading to larger inconsistencies. By carefully constructing her line of questioning, she forced Thomas into defensive positions repeatedly. Each time Thomas tried to interrupt or divert, Crockett calmly restored focus to the topic at hand. Her ability to remain composed under immense pressure highlighted the contrast between her preparedness and Thomas's reactive state. Observers later noted that the dynamic in the room resembled a chess game. Crockett was always several moves ahead, anticipating potential attacks and neutralizing them before they could take effect. Thomas's frustration continued to build. He gestured sharply, spoke over Crockett, and attempted to assert dominance through his tone. His goal seemed to be to intimidate and overwhelm, but Crockett's composure made each attempt ineffective. At one point, Thomas attempted another verbal maneuver, accusing her of misrepresenting facts. Crockett paused, referenced the exact documents, and corrected his statement without sarcasm or emotion. The room reacted immediately. Members whispered, journalists typed, and the tension intensified. Thomas's strategy of aggression backfired because the attempt to intimidate only highlighted his lack of control. The turning point, the moment that defined the hearing, occurred mid-session. Crockett asked about a particular financial gift that had not been disclosed for years. Thomas attempted to deny knowledge, but Crockett had already anticipated this. She presented a document obtained from a public record, clearly showing the gift and timeline. Crockett: Justice Thomas, according to this record, you received this gift on March 12, 2018. It was not disclosed until recently. Can you clarify why this discrepancy exists? Thomas froze. For a few seconds he appeared uncertain. The room held its breath. Even Thomas's advisors exchanged worried glances. No verbal aggression could solve the problem. Facts were now in control. Crockett had guided the hearing to a point where Thomas's prior actions were undeniable. National attention builds. By this stage, reporters were already broadcasting live updates. News networks picked up the story quickly. A Supreme Court justice had attempted to remove a congresswoman from a hearing, only to be factually challenged in real time. Public reaction started to form immediately. Social media erupted with comments emphasizing Crockett's composure and preparedness, contrasting it with Thomas's aggressive, reactive behavior. The attempted arrest, although unsuccessful and without legal effect, became the focal point of discussion. Analysts highlighted it as an unprecedented example of overreach by a justice. Crockett's poise and public perception. Crockett's handling of the confrontation had a dual effect. 1. She maintained legal and procedural correctness in the hearing. 2. She demonstrated leadership and confidence that resonated with the public. Observers later noted that her calm demeanor under extreme pressure amplified her credibility and made Thomas's attempts at intimidation appear weak and overconfident. At this stage, the hearing was no longer just about ethics concerns. It had become a test of constitutional boundaries, power dynamics, and public perception. Crockett's ability to navigate the situation solidified her position as a formidable member of Congress. The beginning of regret. By mid-morning, Thomas realized the consequences of his actions. The attempted removal had failed legally and politically. His overreaction had been recorded by every camera in the room. His advisors quietly began to counsel him to moderate his tone and avoid further escalation. The recognition of his overreach marked the start of what witnesses later described as instant regret. He understood that his credibility, influence, and public image were at risk. Crockett, on the other hand, remained steady, methodical, and assertive. Her calm handling of the situation had shifted the narrative in her favor. End of Part 2 summary. By the end of this portion of the hearing, Thomas had attempted to assert authority inappropriately. Crockett had used preparation, composure, and evidence-based questioning to neutralize the threat. The room, the media, and the public witnessed an extraordinary confrontation with historical implications. This set the stage for Part 3, where Thomas's further attempts to regain control will fail, and Crockett's final takedown will fully establish her dominance in the Haranog. Key takeaways from the incident. From this unprecedented confrontation, several lessons emerged. What preparation outweighs rank. Crockett's success demonstrates that preparation and strategy can neutralize even the most powerful figures. 2. Composure is critical. Remaining calm under pressure not only reinforces credibility but also shifts perception in the eyes of the public and colleagues. Authority is not absolute. Thomas's failed attempt to remove Crockett illustrates that legal and procedural boundaries constrain power. even for high-ranking officials. 4. Public perception matters. The viral nature of the hearing showed how public scrutiny can amplify the consequences of overreach. 5. Evidence is indispensable. Crockett's reliance on documented facts made her questioning unassailable and highlighted the importance of preparation and oversight roles. These lessons extend beyond politics. They apply to legal proceedings, corporate governance, and any situation where authority and accountability intersect. Crockett's post-hearing statement. After the hearing, Crockett issued a brief statement. Today was about accountability, transparency, and the rule of law. No individual, regardless of position, is above the principles that govern this nation. Our institutions are strongest when they operate with integrity and respect for established boundaries. Her statement was widely circulated and praised for its clarity, professionalism, and focus on principle rather than personal confrontation. Thomas's public response. Thomas did not issue a detailed public statement immediately. Observers noted that advisors encouraged restraint to mitigate further scrutiny. Analysts suggested that the attempted removal incident would remain a significant blemish on public perception, particularly because it had been widely documented and shared. Conclusion: a historical moment. The attempted removal of Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett by Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas and her composed response created a rare moment in American history. It highlighted the following: the necessity of preparation and evidence in confronting authority, the power of composure under pressure, the limitations of formal authority when legal and procedural rules are clear. In the weeks following, political commentators, legal analysts, and historians would reference the hearing as an example of effective oversight and a cautionary tale about overreach. The incident became a symbol of how courage, preparation, and adherence to principle can challenge even the highest office in the land. The events of that day demonstrate that accountability, integrity, and procedural knowledge remain central to democratic governance. They remind the public that authority must always operate within the boundaries of law, and that courage and clarity can reshape even the most intimidating confrontations.